All right, so for the next few videos, we're going to be working with Ajax and XHR. Okay, Ajax stands for Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. Ajax isn't a language or a framework or a library. It's a set of web technologies to send and receive data from the client and server. And it does this asynchronously. So it's done behind the scenes without having to explicitly reload the web page. Now, one thing that's kind of ironic is that even though XML is actually included in the Ajax acronym, XML is very rarely used in Ajax anymore. JSON has pretty much taken its place. Okay, it's easier, it's faster, and it's more popular. Most of the APIs that you're going to work with return JSON data, not XML, or in some cases they'll return both. Ajax can also work with just plain text. All right, so let's take a look at a diagram that kind of explains how Ajax works. Okay, so this here is the client or the browser, and then this is the server or the application or web page that we're looking at. Now, usually we would type in a URL, or we would click a link in a browser, and that would send a common request, a common HTTP request to the server, and we'd get a common response back, including the entire web page with the headers and the data. We'd ask for everything and we would get everything. Well, with Ajax, what it allows us to do is it allows us to make requests asynchronously. Okay, and we do this behind the scenes in the background without having to reload or refresh the entire web page. So if we wanted to just update one little section of text, we can do that with Ajax, and it's much faster than having to reload the entire web page. Okay, it also makes things much more interactive. Now, the way that this happens is by making an Ajax call or an asynchronous JavaScript call, and it goes through something called an Ajax engine and uses the XML HTTP request object, or the XHR object, which is actually part of the browser, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. Now, the server returns the data usually in JSON format, but can also be in XML or plain text. All right, and then we parse and we use that data in our application. Now, all of this right here is done behind the scenes without any kind of page refresh, so it happens very fast. Now, when we send and receive requests, it can be from something on our local machine or on our local server, or it can be something from a public API, something like Google Maps or the GitHub API. There's a lot of different weather APIs. There's tons of them out there. Now, of course, these APIs have to have certain permissions granted for us to be able to use them. All right, they usually have something called CORS enabled, which allows for cross-domain communication, meaning that we can make requests to their API even though we're not on the same domain name as them. Okay, some APIs do require some kind of authentication. OAuth is very popular. That part can get really messy, and it's beyond what we're going to be doing here. I will show you how to work with local data, such as a simple JSON file or even a simple text file, and then we'll also work with external APIs. All right, so as I mentioned, the XML HTTP object, or the XHR object, this is the core technology in Ajax. It's provided by the browser's JavaScript environment, so all browsers have this API. Its methods transfer data between client and server, or browser and server. It can also be used with other protocols other than HTTP, but HTTP is the most common. And like I said, it can work with data other than XML, even though it stands for, or even though it's called XML HTTP requests. We mostly deal with JSON data, but we can also deal with plain text as well. Now, there are other libraries and methods to use to make HTTP requests, and Fetch API is one of them. That's actually part of the browser. That's part of core JavaScript, so we are going to get into the Fetch API. But then you have external libraries that you can use, like Axio, SuperAgent, of course jQuery, which is a DOM manipulation library, Node HTTP if you're dealing with Node.js. Now, it's up to you how you want to make your requests. Fetch is what I would suggest because it's part of vanilla JavaScript, and it's a really nice API. Ajax and XHR, which is what we're looking at now for the next few videos, is kind of an older technology, but it's still very important to learn. After that, we'll look into Fetch. Now, Axios, SuperAgent, these are really nice external libraries, but of course you need to include them as an external script. They're not part of your core JavaScript. jQuery I would not suggest using for Ajax because it's so bloated. It's a complete DOM manipulation library, so to just use it for Ajax really doesn't make much sense. And then you have Node HTTP, which is nice if you're using Node.js. All right, so in this course we'll be looking at XHR and Fetch. And there's other libraries. There's other external libraries like Prototype, which I haven't really gotten into, but there's other ways to do this as well to make HTTP requests and so on. All right, so in the next video, we're going to go ahead and get started with Ajax.